Welcome to Board Gems. In this video, I'll be comparing two editions of the Spiel-des-Jahres-award-winning Manhattan, designed by Andreas Seyfarth. On the left, this is the Rio Grande reprint in 2007, but is equivalent, I believe, to the original Hans im Glück printing that originally came out in Germany in the mid-90s. I don't have the first English edition, which was from Mayfair, but it is, component-wise, is very similar. See, it has kind of a classic cityscape with the Empire State Building featured prominently. On the right, I believe this is Mandoo Games is the original publisher, but the German edition is put out by Hans im Glück, and this is the English/French edition for Canada from Foxmind. I notice it says Spiel-des-Jahres. I haven't seen it formatted like that before. I'm not sure if that's a typo or not. The Rio Grande and Hans im Glück edition is in a standard long box that you might see from companies like Ravensburger and 2F Spiele, for example. The Mandoo edition is in a square box. It is significantly smaller than sort of like a Ticket to Ride size box. Smaller in all dimensions. I do feel a little bit strange about the art direction in this game, which I'll come back to, but for now, I just want to mention this guy. Now, I know he's not intended to be a kid. He's wearing a suit and he's holding a newspaper, and that's a kid. This is not a kid. It's not supposed to be a kid, but maybe it's because of the cartoony vibes. I don't get the vibe from the other adults on the cover, but this guy just to me looks like he's a teenager who dressed up and is playing the part of an adult. Not much to say about the back of the box. A little bit of a description and a single image. I personally find that the old edition's photo is a little bit more dynamic, maybe because it's zoomed in, I'm not sure, but also evokes a cityscape better, I feel, than the Mandoo edition, which is zoomed out, it's a smaller picture, and the 3D aspect, to me, doesn't really stand out as much as in the original. If we look inside the box, it's fairly equivalent, 4 big wells for the player pieces and a central well for the cards. The Mandoo edition also comes with 4 player mats, which help you to separate the pieces that you're going to use this round versus the pieces you're saving for a later round, and also reminds of player colors. Does anyone else have nostalgia for rule books that are in black and white? No? Just me? The game's pretty clear. The game is super simple, but obviously the example scoring is not going to work very well in a black and white photo. Obviously it's not a problem in the new edition, very colorful rulebook, as clear or clearer than the old. Zoomed out version of the boards. The artwork in the originals was nothing to write home about. I like that the original had Cairo as a city, but the image they used to represent Cairo was somebody on a camel. We're talking about cities here, guys. But yes, the artwork is very forgettable. I do question Mandoo's choice of color schemes, and I noticed that from the box cover as well, that they seem to be going for almost a tropical color scheme, which doesn't fit with a Manhattan-esque vibe, in my opinion. Like if they were changing the theme, changing the name, setting it in a different place, that'd be different, but Manhattan, it does have a little player aid, which is helpful. The boards are functionally equivalent in size, except for the scoreboard, which in the new edition goes around the board, relatively standard way of doing it. In the original Manhattan, instead they tried to do it in a sky rise, like an elevator going up kind of view, so they have 4 score tracks going from 1 to 20 and then 21 to 40, so you're marching up like an elevator, I suppose. I understand what they were going for. I suppose that is a little bit of a thematic connection. The problem is that Manhattan is best at 4 players, and the way Manhattan plays, each player has to sit on a different side of the board. They have to face a different side. In a 4-player game of Manhattan on the old board, somebody is sitting next to the scoreboard. And I suppose in one sense that's fine. They can be responsible for keeping track of the scores, but they're also a little bit farther away from the actual game happening. Okay, you see the buildings here, the 4 player colors, and the 4 sizes of buildings. So different choices of player colors, but also a different way of representing the levels. The original's pieces had very clearly defined windows. I found that it was easy to identify the number of floors based on the windows. Mandoo's representation of buildings is a little more abstract. You could call these rectangles windows, I suppose. And the fact that they alternate clear and kind of frosted plastic, if I'm describing that well, does have the same effect, although it is a more abstract representation. The biggest difference really is that the originals were opaque and the new ones are transparent. So if you compare sort of equivalent representations of the pieces in a game state, I personally find that the transparent floors just make it a tiny bit harder to count the floors, because, being transparent, the top nub of the piece is still visible at the bottom of any piece you put on top of it. So it just kind of muddies the view, I think. It makes the floors a little bit harder to count. On the plus side, being transparent, it lets in a lot of light. It keeps the gameplay state brighter and casts fewer shadows than the dark, opaque pieces of the original. Original Manhattan's playing cards, very basic in imagery, but they're nice big standard playing card size. Mandoo's cards are obviously brighter, more colorful. They're smaller, not that the cards need to be large. Having the grid in the middle of the card instead of the corners is a little bit less convenient, so if you want to fan out your cards, you can't as easily see at a glance. And also the quality of these cards is quite poor. Like they don't feel like playing cards to me. They just feel like really thin sort of cardboard. I don't know a good way to describe it. They are definitely of a lesser quality than standard playing cards. And the most useless photo I've ever taken for these side-by slideshows. This is the start player marker. And of course, they're different colors than the player colors. So the yellow one is actually for the original, because there's no yellow player color, but there is a black. And in the Mandoo edition, there is a yellow player color, and there is no black, so the start marker is black. But they made the same choice of making it a one-story building. That's it. Thanks for watching. Older games, etc. Take care.